paradrama tales.
How did you gain the approval of your mill? I didn't charm her. I didn't beg. I listened silently for months, learned her language in secret. Then, at dinner, one night while they whispered insults about me, in Turkish, I answered fluently. Her fork hit the plate. That was the moment everything changed. Before I ever said a word in Turkish, I knew I was walking into a tradition I could never fully belong to. Not because I didn't want to, but because I wasn't born into it. My girlfriend Osa warned me. Her family had expectations, deep ones, and they weren't exactly shy about them. So for weeks I studied in secret, 2 hours a day in Turkish cafes and markets. I memorized phrases, practiced etiquette, even learned how to kiss her mom, Fatma, on both cheeks, the right one first, always. The first time I met them was a Sunday breakfast. I showed up with the best box of baklava I could find, cologne for her brothers and flowers for her mom. When Fatma opened the door, I smiled and said, "Merhaba." Her eyebrows lifted slightly. That was the first sign of hope. I took off my shoes at the door, unprompted, called her older sister, Abla, sat straight-backed on the carpet, sipped tea from tulip-shaped glasses, complimented everything, the borek, the olives, even the overcooked eggs. I was polite, respectful, quiet, and the quiet worked. Her younger sister Elif kept refilling my tea glass, giggling. Fatma smiled when I praised her food. I didn't say much more. I didn't need to. But there was one thing I hadn't counted on. Zeynep, Asa's older sister. She was ice in a silk scarf, polite but sharp. Her jokes in English sounded friendly, but the undertones bit. "Oh, he's a good warm-up," she said once, laughing. "Before Asa marries someone Turkish for real." I smiled, let it go. At least for now. But at dinner, a week later, everything changed. Fatma served everyone steaming plates of kofte and rice. To me, a mound of raw meat dripping with onion juice. And just before I could speak, Zeynep whispered to Fatma in Turkish. He says Turkish food gives him diarrhea. Fatma gasped. Her hands tightened around her prayer beads. I stared down at my plate, heart pounding. I could have spoken up right then, but I didn't. Not yet. I needed to be sure. I needed them to say one more thing, one more betrayal before I gave them the shock of their lives. There's something surreal about sitting at a table smiling politely, while everyone around you is served a warm, home-cooked meal, and you're handed a plate that looks like it came straight from a butcher's floor. Ground lamb, raw onions, no spices, no garnish, just meat and silence. That's what I remember most. The silence. Fatma didn't say a word. She just placed the plate in front of me and turned away. Asa looked confused. Maybe it's a mistake, she whispered, but it wasn't. I knew that. Everyone at the table did. Zeynep, of course, broke the silence, with a smirk. This was always Emre's favorite, she said sweetly in Turkish. Emre. The name alone told me everything. He was Asa's ex, her first love. Turkish, traditional. The man Fatma had once hoped Asa would marry. I realized right then this wasn't just dinner. It was a test, a comparison, a declaration, you are not him, you are not one of us. But I wasn't ready to give up, not when I'd come this far. So I picked up my fork and tried to smile. "This is unique," I said in English, and that's when Zeynep struck again. She turned to Fatma and without blinking translated, he says, "Your house smells like a kebab shop, that it needs renovation." I felt the air change. Fatma's face flushed. She began muttering prayers under her breath. Asa opened her mouth to defend me, but I stopped her with a gentle pinch under the table. Not yet. I needed them to keep talking, to keep underestimating me, because the moment was coming, the one I'd rehearsed for. I cleared my throat and looked straight at Fatma. And then, after 6 months of lessons of pretending not to understand, of holding my tongue, I spoke. In Turkish. "Mother Fatma," I said carefully. "I have been learning your language in secret to ask for Asa's hand with respect. Every word your daughter just translated was a lie. Allah is my witness." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was seismic. Asa gasped. Elif burst out laughing. Zeynep's mouth dropped open, stunned. And Fatma. She dumped the raw meat back into Zeynep's lap, stood up and hugged me for the first time. "My son," she whispered. I had passed the first test, but I didn't know it yet. That was only the beginning. I thought things would calm down after the dinner, I thought maybe speaking Turkish would earn me peace. Instead, it made me a target. The next day, Zeynep went online. It started small Instagram stories, vague quotes about betrayal. Some people pretend to care just to get what they want. I didn't think much of it, but then came the carousel post. A picture of the dinner table cropped, of course, to exclude me. Captions in Turkish: a family dinner, ruined by arrogance, followed by a comment thread that slowly became a battleground. And that's when I realized something chilling. Zeynep wasn't just trying to sabotage my relationship with Asa. She was trying to ruin my standing in the entire family's eyes. Digitally, publicly, strategically. She posted an old picture of Emre shirtless, tanned at a beach in Bodrum, tagging it, "We don't always appreciate what we have until it's gone." Hundreds of likes, comments from cousins, old friends, even one from Fatma that just said a single red heart emoji. I asked Asa, "Why is she doing this?" She sighed. "Because you made her irrelevant. You spoke the language. You earned respect. And now she's scrambling for control." I wanted to ignore it. I really did. But ignoring Zeynep was like leaving a leaking pipe unattended. You don't see the damage until your floor is rotted through. Then it escalated. She began sending DMs to Asa's friends, screenshots from years ago, messages Asa had exchanged with Emre, out of context, twisted, with the suggestion that maybe Asa wasn't over him, that maybe I had been a rebound, a joke. The final blow came when she tagged Asa in a story with a poll: "Can someone really love someone who doesn't know where they came from?" I was livid, but Asa, she was done. She grabbed her phone, called Zeynep, and I swear the window shook from how hard her voice cracked. "This is the last time I call you my sister," she said. "You crossed the line." But even after hanging up, I could see it in Asa's eyes, the sadness, the exhaustion, and the fear that somehow her family's poison would infect what we were building. I held her hand that night and said, "This ends now, not with drama, with dignity." And I meant it. Because if Zeynep wanted a digital war, I had a better weapon: the truth, spoken fluently, respectfully, and in her own language. I didn't expect to become a viral villain overnight, but the internet moves fast, especially when someone's manipulating it behind the scenes. A week after Asa cut Zeynep off, something strange happened. Her cousin Salim sent her a voice memo on WhatsApp. "You should hear what your fiancé really said about your family," it began. Curious, she played it. It was me, or it sounded like me, saying things like, "They're backward and I'm only pretending to respect them so I can marry Asa and take her back to the States." My voice, my accent. But none was true. I never said those words. And yet the file kept spreading. Within hours it had circulated through the family group chat. One uncle wrote, "He fooled all of us." Another added typical American arrogance. Some blocked Asa outright. She was trembling when she showed me. "Did you?" "No," I said, without even letting her finish. "That's not me." But the doubt, however slight, flashed in her eyes for a second. That moment hurt more than anything. I couldn't blame her. We were drowning in smoke, and she didn't know where the fire had started. But thankfully someone did. Her name was Elif, a software engineer and Osa's second cousin. She reached out the next day. "I think Zeynep's using a voice editor, possibly Resemble.ai or a Turkish app called Ses Taktik. I can prove it." She analyzed the waveform, showed us unnatural jumps in the file's pitch and pacing, even caught parts where my original voice had been clipped from a vlog Asa once posted. It wasn't just manipulation, it was premeditated. We sent Elif's analysis to the family, attached the waveform evidence, highlighted every edit in bright yellow. Some still didn't care, they'd made up their minds. But a few apologized. One aunt even cried. Zeynep. She went quiet, deleted the post, then her entire account. But the damage had been done, and yet something beautiful happened that week. Asa turned to me and said, "You could have screamed, fought, burned it all down, but you stayed calm, and that's why I believe you." I looked at her and realized Zeynep tried to take my voice away. But it was another woman in the family, Elif, who gave it back. Not all heroes come in armor. Some show up with headphones, code, and conviction. We thought the voice memo was the end of it. But Zeynep wasn't done. A week later, Asa's grandfather, who barely speaks during family events, called a men's council at their family compound. Uncles, cousins, even two neighbors. The topic, My immigration scheme. Apparently, someone had discovered a document proving I had applied for a K-1 visa with Asa's name months before I officially proposed. I was stunned. First, I never filed for a visa. We weren't even engaged at the time the document was dated. Second, Asa had always made it clear she wanted to stay in Turkey near her grandparents, at least for a while. Why would I try to sneak her into the US like some green card groom? But the paper looked real. Her uncle Osman waved it around shouting, "Look, he planned this all along." They passed it around like evidence at a trial. The seal looked authentic. The signature was close to mine. But the date that gave it away. It listed a location we'd never visited, Seattle, Washington. I've never even been there. Asa spoke up. "We got engaged 2 months after this was filed. This makes no sense." But the room was already hot with doubt. The older generation didn't care about dates. They cared about shame. One uncle whispered, "This will ruin her." Another said, "He's trying to kidnap her in legal paperwork." Only one person asked the right question. "Elif, where did this document come from?" Turns out it was emailed anonymously to Asa's father, from a burner Gmail account. When we forwarded it to Elif, she tracked the PDF metadata. Guess whose laptop had created it? Zainab's. It was over after that, or should have been. But here's the thing. In families like Asa's, truth doesn't always win over tradition. Half the family doubled down, refused to believe Zainab was behind it. The other half finally opened their eyes. And just like that, the quiet fractures turned into loud divisions. There were arguments at dinners, cold shoulders in the mosque, canceled engagements between cousins who were suddenly on opposite sides. Asa's mom cried. Her dad said nothing. Just smoked outside for hours, looking older than I'd ever seen him. We weren't just fighting for each other anymore. We were standing in the middle of a storm that was tearing their whole family in two. Just when we thought things couldn't get any messier, he showed up Akut, the ex. He walked into the family courtyard like he never left, with a smug grin and the kind of confidence that comes from knowing you're playing on home turf. He brought his mother too, all dolled up in gold bangles and silk, like they were there for an engagement, not a reconciliation. Word spread fast. Akut's back from Germany, people whispered, and he's serious this time. Asa's aunt kissed his cheek like he was a returning war hero. Even Asa's dad cracked a rare smile. They ushered him inside, offered tea sweets. Meanwhile, Asa and I stood off to the side, invisible. The message was clear. This is the son-in-law we approve of. But what made it worse, he wasn't just trying to win the family back. He was trying to win Asa. He came with flowers. He apologized for the past, claimed he'd changed. He even referenced religion and restoring honor as if I was the stain on her reputation. Asa pulled me aside later that evening, her hands trembling. They're trying to push him back into my life. And they were. Her grandmother said, "You should think with your head, not your heart." Her uncle warned her, "He comes from our soil. You can't plant foreign roots and expect them to hold." I wanted to scream, to shout. I've never asked Asa to change who she is. I'd studied the culture, the language I sat through, family dinners I didn't understand for months just to earn trust. But none of it mattered to them. Akut was Turkish. That was the only qualification he needed. But what they didn't know, or refused to see, was how deeply Asa had changed. She wasn't the same girl who had once bowed to pressure. She wasn't impressed by tradition for tradition's sake. That night, she said something I'll never forget. "They want me to marry a memory, not a man." It was poetic, painful, and true. Akut represented what they used to want for her. I represented who she'd chosen. But the ghosts of tradition don't leave quietly. They linger in glances in silence and passive-aggressive prayers over dinner. And now, more than ever, we had to decide, would we keep fighting? Or finally walk away? The morning of our wedding, I found the venue door locked. No explanation, no key, no staff. Just a cold silence and the faint echo of distant disapproval. Asa's cousin had warned us 2 days earlier someone might try something, but we brushed it off as paranoia. We were wrong. The sabotage wasn't loud. It was subtle. Whispers about canceled bookings. Rumors that the imam wasn't coming. A mix-up with the photographer. All designed to delay, to disorient, to rattle us just enough to crack. But we didn't crack. Asa showed up in her simple white dress hair, braided with jasmine eyes, steady. No limousine, no orchestra, no grand procession. Just her clutching my hand saying, "Let's do this anyway." We moved everything to the small rooftop of a nearby apartment. Tyler, my best friend, ran and borrowed plastic chairs from the neighbors. Someone laid out a rug. One of Asa's old professors, who was also certified, stepped in to officiate. And when Asa walked down that makeshift aisle under a string of flickering cafe lights, the air changed. The weight of every judgmental glare, every fake smile, every manipulation melted in the face of something undeniable. Real love doesn't need permission. Her brother didn't show. Her mother stayed home, refusing to watch her daughter ruin her life. Even Akut had the audacity to text her, "You can still back out." She didn't even flinch. Instead, when it was her turn to speak, she looked at me and said, "This is not rebellion. This is faith in you and us and in the life we're choosing without a script." There were tears of joy, of release. From her, from me, from even a few guests who had once hesitated, but now clapped harder than anyone else. That moment wasn't a wedding. It was an exorcism of shame, of control of all the outdated expectations forced on her shoulders for years. We kissed as husband and wife, as the call to prayer echoed from a nearby mosque. And in that second I knew the war wasn't over, but we had won this battle, together, on our terms. And that was worth every fight. The truth is, blood starts you, but it doesn't have to define you. I didn't marry into Asa's family. I married Asa, and slowly, painfully, we built our own. Not from matching surnames or shared ancestry, but from trust, loyalty, and the kind of courage that doesn't flinch when it's asked to stand alone. Her uncle, the one who brought fresh bread to our tiny rooftop wedding, now calls me Olam, my son. Her little cousin, who once side-eyed me at dinner, now FaceTimes me for math help. And Tyler, he flew out again last month just to help us paint the baby's room. That's the thing. Family doesn't have to share your blood to protect your peace. And sometimes the hardest thing isn't walking away from what you were born into, but choosing to believe you deserve better. Asa's mother hasn't reached out. Her sister still posts cryptic quotes. And Akut. He's still somewhere lurking behind fake accounts. But none of that matters anymore. Because every night when I lock the front door and Asa is humming in the kitchen, I know we're safe not just from harm, but from legacy. We chose each other, not tradition, not fear, not obligation. And if you're watching this, wondering if it's okay to choose your own peace over your inherited pain, let this be your sign. The family you earn will always love you louder than the one who only claimed you. Stick around. More stories like this are just beginning.